All right, guys. This is Ken Spansberg, Director of MSI, and today we have Ryan Wheeler, Associate Head Coach of St. Joe's. We're going to talk about recruiting for the most part. You know, everybody knows Ryan as Wheels, so that's what he's going to be referred to. I figure we'll start off with the basics. Wheels, why don't you tell us a little bit about your playing career back in the day at Penn State, and then how you got into coaching?
Sure. Well, you're really taking me back a long ways there, but
I Googled you.
okay. Well, I grew up, in the area. I went to Souderton High School, and probably our most famous alum is a guy that most people have heard of named Jamie Moyer, that went on to have a great career at St. Joe's, and then played in the big leagues for 20 plus years. But was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to move on to Penn State University, and played my college baseball there. And from there, I was fortunate enough to be selected in the 31st round by the California Angels organization. I don't know when the last time they were called California. They've changed names about 3 or 4 times, but was able to play for a couple years, and honestly, got an opportunity to start my coaching career kind of by chance. I took a job down in Williamsburg, Virginia, but happened to know the head coach and the assistant coach at the College of William and Mary. And, when I moved down there, I met up with them, and they were looking for a volunteer assistant. And so I jumped on the staff there to begin my career. And, after a few years, was able to make a decision to do coaching full time and make that my career. And I left the other job and have been coaching ever since, and had stops along the way at the University of Pennsylvania, University of Richmond, was the head baseball coach at Temple University. And now I've been over at St. Joe's University for the last 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, so Temple's actually the first time I met you. And
yeah.
Really interesting situation for those of you that don't know. Temple actually had their baseball program cut. So this is kind of the second time you've had a season end.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for these guys? Because you might be the best one to give it.
What was very strange as things were unfolding for us when the season was cut, the speed at which information was coming out and the speed at which things were being canceled or changing brought me back to that time when Temple made the decision to eliminate their program. When you get into coaching, you learn a lot of things, based on coaches you work with and listening to other coaches, things like that. But one of the things that they don't talk about is, what do you do when the season's canceled or a program's eliminated? And, going through it the first time at Temple, I'll never forget, the players just looking at me for those answers. And I said, this isn't in the manual, so you're going to have to bear with me, and we're going to have to get through it. But this time I felt like I was a little bit more prepared. And I think two of the biggest things for our players was that, look, first of all, we're going to play baseball again. It's unfortunate what's going on, but we are going to get an opportunity to play baseball again. We don't know when it's going to be, but there will be a light at the end of the tunnel, and we'll get back on the field again. But the bigger thing was just listening to our players, because all of them were experiencing different emotions. Some were anger, some were sad, depressed, whatever it may have been. And they just needed an outlet. And, being there to listen and just talk to them, trying to just give them hope, give them different things to work on, show them that there's different ways to go about handling this was the biggest thing that I think I was able to provide this time around. And look, I'm still, to this day, we're 3 or 4 weeks into this, and still communicating with our players, on a daily basis. Not all of them, but, usually 2 or 3 a day, just checking in, making sure they're okay, seeing how things are going, and just trying to keep them positive, because there will be a time that we get back on the baseball field again.
For sure. And I think those are both really good points. So at Temple, you had, once the season got cut, you had a lot of players going to different programs. And I think with the NCAA giving everyone back an extra year, and with the draft being cut, you're going to have players that are going from one program to another, this season. Do you have advice for those guys in making a transition to a brand new program?
Yeah, well, the situation was a little bit different, at Temple compared to here, in that, the guys at Temple didn't have a program to come back to. So we essentially turned ourselves into a travel team for the spring season. And they were auditioning, not only for the teams that we were playing against, but for anybody else out there across the country, for those guys that had a chance to move on. Right now, with the way this situation is, our players at least have an opportunity to come back to our program. And, those guys that are looking to go to another program for an opportunity, the opportunities are going to be tough right now. It's going to be limited. And we can talk about exactly how the rule reads and what the NCAA is allowing and not allowing. But, obviously jumping from one program to the other, you have to get acclimated to a whole new world, a whole different school, a whole different academic curriculum, different teammates. So, it's a big adjustment. But I don't know what, I didn't actually move programs myself other than coming over to St. Joe's. And for me, coming over from Temple, I just tried to go in and absorb everything that they were doing in the program. I wasn't going in there to change anything. I had my ideas and stuff, but they were having success before I got there. I just wanted to try to fit into that program. So, I really sat back for a year and just tried to learn and take it all in. But guys that are going to play and maybe only have 1 year left, they're going to want to try to go in and make an impact. And hopefully you're being brought in because there's a need and an opportunity for you to play and have a good impact in that program.
For sure. No, I think that's great advice for these guys. And the second part was the fact that we get to play baseball again, which is going to be pretty awesome whenever that happens. So a lot of people that are going to be listening to this are going to be guys who are, in high school and they want to be recruited. How do you see this summer going?
We're starting to get a better picture of it now. Certainly because the NCAA came out with their ruling, a week ago, and we're starting to have discussions with our team on who wants to come back, so on and so forth. But I do think that, opportunities, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but I do think because of this, there's going to be a pinch on rosters. And there may be a few less opportunities for guys coming out of high school just because the rosters will not allow it. We have a 1 year sort of exception to bring our seniors back to where they don't count against our roster limit of 35. But if they come back, that may mean your redshirting players in the program, especially the incoming kids who you were counting on to maybe play right away. And so it's going to push everything back a little bit, and it may force programs to just say, okay, well, we're going to hold off. Instead of bringing in 7 guys in our 2021 class, we may only need to bring in 5 or 4. But every university and every school is going to be different. The hard part is going to be for each of these players trying to explore and figure out, what are the opportunities at each one of the schools. And they're just going to have to ask, and they're going to have to talk to the coaches and try to get a feel for just where that roster's at, how many guys have been backed up because of bringing players back, and, just figure it out that way. But whether this pandemic came about or not, the one thing that I always tell players is to just be patient with the recruiting process. Be patient with it. Because, everybody wants to be committed. They all want to know where they're going. And I see too many people that try to rush the process. And now more than ever, you're just going to have to be patient with it. And, there will be opportunities, though. I don't want to make it sound like there's not going to be any opportunities for guys. There will be opportunities. They just may not be as obvious right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think patience is really the key word, because you go on social media and you see all these people committing. And I think it's very natural for guys to sit there thinking, why not me? What am I doing wrong? What am I missing? What advice would you have to someone who's entering high school as far as, one, a timeline, and then 2, really what they should be doing? from a baseball and recruiting standpoint?
Yeah, right now that's a hard thing, or it's difficult because everything is really shut down. Guys are having a hard time staying in shape, continuing to try to work on their game like they normally would at this time of year with the high school seasons playing and practicing. Obviously whatever you can do at your house or in a park or wherever you're allowed to go, do the best you can with trying to stay sharp on your game. Once we're allowed to get back on the baseball field, there's obviously going to need to be some time to build back up, build our skills back up. Pitchers especially are going to need to build their arm strength back up to be able to start to play games. But the bottom line is that the process is going to be slowed down for us. We are in a dead period right now, meaning that we cannot go off campus to recruit until May 30th. So even if things were to open back up here the beginning of May, we're not going to watch any players at least until June 1st now. So until we can get back out and start seeing guys and stuff, then the process can start moving forward again. So, to say exactly what the timeline is going to be, it's hard to answer because we just don't know when we're going to get back on the field. But I know it's going to be another month and a half at least until we're able to get out there. So that's just going to push everything back, a month and a half or so. One of the things that the NCAA is going to need to look at is the recruiting calendar and maybe taking off some of the restrictions that they've put on here in the last year or so. And we're hopeful as coaches that once we get back, they say, okay, look, you can recruit until November, till we get to the signing period in November, and there's no restrictions. Then that may allow us to catch up a little bit. But if we still have the same restrictions on us, now the time is going to be, that's going to put another crunch on things and going to slow things down even more. So if you're a 2021 graduate, right now, I think the end of the summer, the fall might be the earliest time you're going to start to see a lot of commitments coming about. But I think it's probably going to even go into the spring of their senior year to where they're not knowing where they're going, but programs are still looking for players.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. So you mentioned something interesting, that a lot of these guys are not going to have access to weight rooms, to a lot of different things that they would need to get better, which I think it makes it very tough for you guys to evaluate, because you're not necessarily seeing guys at 100%. You might be seeing 80%. Have you thought about how you're going to go out this summer and look at players? Like, are they going to be on a sliding scale, thinking of the fact they've been off for a couple months?
You're right. No, we're going to have to. There's no doubt about it that we know that when we get back out there to see guys, they're not going to be maybe in baseball shape or be at 100%. So yeah, there is going to be a little bit of a sliding scale. There is going to be all right, I'm not going to be as tough with my grading or evaluation of guys. We're going to have to project more. We're going to have to try to learn more about, who this guy is his character and makeup are going to, I think, come into play a little bit more, because we want to know that this guy's going to work hard to get to 100%, and not use all of this as an excuse as to why they haven't gotten any better or want to improve. So yeah, to answer your question, I think that we're going to have some understanding when we go watch guys like, he's not at 100%, but I see the potential there, and I think he can get there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, how much stock are you going to put into like winter video? Like if I send you a video of a guy who's like 85, 87, on the gun, but you come out and see him in the summer and he's, 82, 83.
I think we're going to have to put more stock in it than we've done in the past. And right now that's really the only thing that we can do is look at videos. And so my days, are spent watching videos and just trying to get a feel for where guys are at based on what I'm able to see. But yeah, you're right. If we get a video that's a guy's 85, 87, and then we go see him and he's 82, 83, well, we know he's been up to 85, 87. So we know he can get there for all these reasons that we just talked about. He's not there now. He's not in shape, but it's okay. We're going to look at the fundamentals, the mechanics of the delivery, or we're going to look at the mechanics of the swing. We're going to look at the defensive actions and things like that, and recognize that, okay, we've just been through a lot. They've not been playing, but we know he's been there in the past, and we've seen it on video. So we think he can get there again.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting and challenging for you guys to do that. You know, it's not something
Sure.
that you're used to for sure. So you're a humble guy. So guys, if you didn't know, Wheels was the A10 recruiting coordinator of the year. He's had a bunch of different guys who have went on to play pro ball, and I think it was 3 that made it to the MLB. So when you're going out to watch players, what exactly are you looking for? Let's say an infielder or a hitter. You know, what are some things that you really like in the guy that might not be, you know, obvious?
You know, for me, so Major League Scouts, they evaluate the 5 tools. You know, run, hit, catch, throw, and then, well, with the hitting, hit for power. Those are the 5 tools. You know, for me, one of those tools needs to be a plus tool for a guy. You know, if he's got a plus tool that's his speed or his defensive ability, his arm strength, then that's a guy that gets on my radar screen. You know, but then the potential to have, you know, 2+ tools or 3+ tools as they develop is what I'm looking for. So, you know, the hitting may not be a plus tool right now. It's average, but I think with development and just seeing where their game's at, we can take that and make it an above average tool. Then that's what I'm going to look for. So the ability piece has to be there, but I like to see these guys have a plus tool. Now, the 6th tool that comes into play is the character and makeup piece. And that's the hardest one for us to evaluate. I've been doing this long enough that I can watch guys play and, you know, sort of assess their physical tools, but the mental tool and sort of their character and makeup is the one that's the hardest because that factors in big time in the game of baseball, as you know. So, and taking time to learn about them, it just takes time. And with as fast as the process moves, sometimes we don't always have the ability to find out that true character and makeup piece. We rely on coaches to tell us, but then when we're there, we are certainly watching everything that they do. How do they handle failure is something that I like to see. You know, rather than going to see a guy go 4 for 4, yeah, that's great. But we already kind of knew he was a good player beforehand. But what happens when he strikes out? What does he do? Does he walk back to the dugout and with his shoulders slumped, his head down? You know, if a guy makes an error in the field, does he automatically, his posture and body language change, or is he able to handle that moment and move on to the next play? I guarantee you, every one of the guys that we recruit and bring into our program, they're going to fail at some point. They're going to make an error. They're going to strike out. And they're going to go through slumps and bad times. And how you handle that becomes a big factor in determining how successful you're going to be. So, so watching how guys and what they do on the field and how they are around their teammates, all of that stuff becomes a big factor in this recruiting process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that people don't realize. You know, they grow up, they're the best player on their high school team, best player in the travel team, and all of a sudden they go to college and there's 8 guys that have had exactly the same success as them. And then 3 years of guys who have already been in the program for at least a year.
No doubt. And you know, look, I'll take you back to my Penn State days, and I really, you know, not to talk about myself, but, you know, I thought I was the superstar that they wanted at Penn State, and I showed up. And this was back in the day when we didn't have roster limits, and there were 42 guys on the roster, and you know, there were 6 or 7 other middle infielders besides myself, and I quickly realized, you know, okay, wow, this isn't what I thought. They didn't tell me this, so you know, but I stuck with it, and things worked out for me. But you know, some guys don't know how to handle that, and you know, we try to be as honest as we can with regard to the situation we have and why we're recruiting that person and what the opportunities are going to be. But you know, sometimes it's a little bit of a shock for guys when they get to campus, and so how you handle that and react to it is going to determine, you know, where your career goes down the road.
For sure. Now, would that be your advice to really any incoming freshmen? Because I think the 2020 grads are in for an absolute battle this fall. Would that be what you tell them? Just be ready.
Yeah, and look, we had a conference call with all of our incoming players last night to just really be as transparent as we possibly could with them regarding who's coming back on our roster and just what our roster situation looked like. We presented to them, what the different options would be for them, moving forward. We hope that every one of them still wants to come and be on campus here in the fall. But we told them it's going to be a little bit more competitive because there's going to be a few more bodies running around than what we anticipated. But by no means are we taking away the opportunity for them to come out and compete. And if they're the best guy, then they're gonna play. But we mapped that out for them and just explained to them that the landscape has changed a little bit. Not just nobody's fault and nobody had control over it, but it is what it is. So, they are now going to make decisions for what they think might be best for their future. But honestly, after talking with them, I think we're going to see all of them on campus in the fall, and we're excited because we think it's a good group.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure it's going to be one of the most competitive springs internally for everybody.
Yeah, it's hard enough sometimes keeping 35 guys happy. Now you've got 40 or 45 guys. It's going to be a little bit more challenging. So
for sure. Now, what impact do you see the draft having in all this? Because if for those of you guys that don't know, it's definitely going to be cut, and I think realistically It's going to be between 5 and 10 rounds.
Correct. I think for programs that we're anticipating on losing a number of juniors, I think they're going to see a bigger impact because those guys aren't going to get drafted. 1 or 2 of them may, but not 6 or 7 of them. And so those guys therefore are going to be there. And they were sort of being counted on to move on. So, the opportunities for the incoming players is going to be less. I think in some ways, guys that were fringe draft picks, we have a couple that, needed to be seen by the scouts this year, this spring, and a couple of them, the 2 guys in question, we're off to a good start. But, they haven't been seen. And so what happens to them? Well, they still are going to have the ability to maybe sign a free agent contract. They may not get as much money as they thought. But they may not get that opportunity. So some guys are going to lose out in all of this. But at the college level, I think the programs that were anticipating on losing players to the draft, they're not going to lose nearly as many as they thought, which is just going to back the rosters up even more.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. So back to the kind of the summer and recruiting, I can only imagine, like assuming we have the full summer, there's going to be some type of event or showcase or camp every single day these guys could go to. What kind of advice would you give these guys when they're trying to figure out like their calendar?
Boy, obviously they're going to need to try to pick events that from the financial standpoint fit into their family's budget, but try to get to what's hard is that we don't know what events are still going to be going on and which ones are going to be canceled. But I think the bigger events that are going to attract a number of coaches are going to be the better ones to get to, just because you're right. Every day we could run in 1,000 different directions and go to a lot of different things, but we're probably going to go where the numbers are, and if I know I can go to a place where I can see 100 or 150 kids compared to some other place where I'm just going to watch a game or a couple games and see 20 or 30 kids, I'm going to go to the bigger event. So I think you need to pick some bigger events, but then I also think you need to probably start to get a handle on where there might be needs and are those particular schools holding camps, and try to get to some of those individual camps at particular schools so that you're putting yourself in front of those coaches. Waiting around and relying on those coaches to come out and see you, I think is going to be tough because there's just going to be so many things for us to pick from and choose from that we're not going to be able to be everywhere. But at the same time, you get to these bigger events, you can get lost in the numbers a little bit. So it's a double-edged sword, and that's why it's hard to give some advice there, because I think if you try to rely on going to all the big events where all the coaches are going to be all the time, you may get lost in the shuffle. If you go to the smaller events, there may be nobody that shows up. So I think it needs to be a combination. It's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's kind of an unfair question without an actual player that you're giving that advice to, because everyone's path is going to be different.
Exactly.
You mentioned the college coach camps, and for us, like, we've had a lot of success placing guys when they actually go to that specific camp. And I think that makes sense, because you're playing on that campus, you're working with those coaches, and for you guys, you probably have 3, 4, 5 players that you're thinking about, and being able to see them all in one place is really beneficial.
No doubt.
How does a player know if a school's really interested in them, or if it's just a mass email that's blasted out?
Sure. Look, I'll be honest. I mean, we try to respond to every email, and right now, with all the time that we've got, we can respond to the emails we're getting. But, in a lot of cases, we are sending back form letters and things like that to just let them know that we received information. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're recruiting them. I think if you want to know if a school's genuinely interested in you, if you're not sure if it's a form letter or not, you can always write that coach back and ask them, hey, where have you seen me? What is it you like about my game? Are you recruiting for my position? Whatever sort of questions are on your mind, you can ask that coach. And if they respond to you, and say, hey, we saw you at such and such event, or, answer, yeah, we're recruiting for your position, then there's a good chance that there's some level of interest. Certainly if a coach picks up the phone and calls you, and in our case, that would be for seniors and juniors. Sophomores and freshmen, we're not allowed to initiate the phone call, but if you're a junior or senior and we pick up the phone and call you, then there's a level of interest there. We're not just going to pick up the phone and be calling anybody, only those players that we're interested in. If you're a sophomore or freshman and a coach has asked you to call them, then there's a good chance that they're interested in you. Very good chance that they're interested in you. So, that's how you can tell. When we're at these big events, though, and we're at these tournaments or showcases, we're not really under the NCAA rules allowed to get into conversations. However, when the event ends, that's when some of these conversations can happen. And if you're curious as to whether the coach is interested in you or not, he's there, by all means, you can go up and talk to him. And the good guys will take time to spend a few minutes and have a conversation with you and kind of let you know where you stand. But I know that that's a hard part for guys to try to figure out, is, were they really interested or are they not? And I think they do get a lot of the form letters. Respond to those emails with some questions and find out what kind of answers you get. And if they take the time to get back to you, then there's a good chance they're interested.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice, and that's actually something I haven't heard of, or at least suggested myself. But you're right.
Mm-hmm.
For you guys, you have to fill the camps, and part of that just means casting a wide net.
Yeah.
So, right now, what should players be doing from a recruiting standpoint?
I think right now, you can be sending sending emails out to coaches. If you have some video footage that you can attach, that's going to be great, because that's really all that we can do right now is look at videos. Beyond that, trying to initiate phone calls and stuff like that is, could be good, but trust me, if the coach is interested, he'll reach out and call you. So I think just trying to correspond, and not, you send an email this week to a coach. You don't need to send one the next week and the following week. I mean, there's nothing going on. We don't need to get bombarded. We'll see the email. We'll know you're interested, and if we see something we like, we may go back to you. But emailing the coaches right now is probably the best thing you can do. And then obviously trying to stay on top of your game as best you can is the other thing that they can do right now.
For sure. So we talked about this before we started recording, but I think one thing people are forgetting is that the SAT and the ACT really aren't going to be taken by a lot of these guys.
Right.
How do you see
Right.
that impacting the recruiting process?
Look, the NCAA is going to have to make some exceptions to what's going to be required for student athletes in high school. Each school then individually is going to have to make adjustments to their admission standards because of what's going on here. So I right now we don't know how long this is going to last and what, I mean, at some point the SATs will be offered again, but when that is, we don't know. So trying to say, well, the NCAA is going to do this or the universities are going to do that is a little bit hard. But I do know in the conversations we've had as an athletic department that there's going to have to be some new guidelines, some new sort of rules that we all work under, and some exceptions that are given to these student athletes in high school because things have just changed.
Yeah, for sure. So do you see a lot of colleges going test optional?
I could see more colleges going test optional. I mean, we've been test optional for a few years here, and for St. Joe's specifically, the test optional piece is great for guys that are good students but just don't test well. The guys that are good students and test well, it helps with the academic merit that they might be able to receive. So, but I think that they may take that piece out, and more schools may be test optional because guys just haven't had the opportunity to take either one of the tests.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're going to be going into uncharted territory for sure.
No doubt.
I mean, is there anything else you want to tell these guys? Some advice? I think we covered a lot today.
We did, and
So,
I feel for them. I mean, this is a very crazy time. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would be in this type of situation, and I know I'm not the only one that's thinking that. But there are bigger things to worry about right now with regard to our families being healthy and safe, and our own personal well-being. The opportunity to play college baseball and get an education, they will be there. We're just not sure how it's going to look, a couple months from now. But, just staying safe, staying healthy right now is the best thing. Trying to stay on top of your schoolwork, do as well as you can to finish out the year is going to be important. And then staying sharp with your game. We all recognize that, as we talked about, that, guys aren't going to be on top of their game when we get back. But, at some point we'll be back on the field, and hopefully life gets back to a little bit more of a normal, or what we call normal. But right now, that's don't worry about that stuff. Just be healthy and safe, and take care of ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the guys who are doing what they need to do right now are going to be rewarded come the summer.
Sure.
It's going to be pretty obvious who's putting in work and who's not.
Sure.
But, like you said, at this point, staying safe is the most important thing for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, look, this is a great time to really, focus on some things that you need to get better at. And there's plenty of ways that you can work out and do different drills. If you get on social media, I feel like things that I've seen on there that I've not seen before, and I'm learning. I'm picking up new drills and things. So there's plenty of resources out there that you can pick up different drills that you can work on. But this is a time that you can really focus on improving those weaknesses that you have, because there's really nothing else going on.
Yeah, for sure. It's like Rocky IV. We're in a barn, and you just have to be creative with the tools that you have.
That's it. And I enjoy seeing, how creative some guys are being with some of the different things that they're doing. I'm like, wow, they are really resourceful right there. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. You just got to
Yeah.
make the best of the situation.
That's right.
But, I appreciate your time today. Glad the thunderstorm didn't knock down any limbs on the car.
Thanks. Yeah. No, we're good. I mean, it's been raining, but it's good. So no, I'm glad you had me. Thanks for having me, and always enjoy working with you guys over there, and look forward to seeing all of your players real soon.
Yeah, same. It would be nice to actually be on a baseball field at some point.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, take care and stay safe, Wheels.
All right. Thanks.